All right. So we just did a session playing around with basically just creating some better hooks for React, where there's this like unanswerable question of when React introduced hooks, specifically hooks for state management, was the model like embracing reconciliation and immutability? Is that why we got into the whole concurrent mode and everything? Like, what if we didn't have those hooks for state management? We rather had observation-based hooks. And how would that scale better, solve performance issues, and so on and so on. What we did here is that we just used like the underlying Bonsify project to kind of build up these hooks. And then we talked about like, okay, like how would you actually sell that to React developers? And one thing is like everyone has like a relationship to the existing hooks. And what if you kind of list those hooks and then just compare it to these other hooks? Like they map to like an observer version. And how would that look like? So let's just do that. How do you create? Let's see. How do you create? Oh, why isn't it dark mode? How do I make you dark mode? So, settings. What's it called? Markdown preview. There's a theme thingy here. Where's the theme? I want you to be cold block theme. There we go. So it was, let's do GitHub dark. Okay, fine. How was this? Hello? Hello? Isn't this how you do tables in Markdown? Oh. That's weird. Oops. Oh, there we go. Thanks. React, observing React. So this would be use state, and then you have use store. The point is to kind of, oh, look at that formatting. Is to kind of show, yeah. Like how would you kind of explain the difference between them? Well, maybe you should just list them first. So, and then we have, what's it called? Use effect, use reaction, use layout effect, use layout reaction. And then we have use memo, use computed. I'm kind of stuck already. So the whole point is that like all other hooks are just fine, right? Um, State management in React does none. Oh, hi, Mikey. That's so nice of you to comment. That made my day and most of my weekend. It's, I expect. That's super nice of you. Yeah, and also it brings joy to my heart when someone relates me to Stitches, because it kind of grew so way beyond that initial thing. And I have to give a shout out to Fabrice as well, because we were iterating on Stitches together. Like Stitches had like a lot of iterations even before Stitches. Um, just exploring a lot of different things, and that was a lot of fun. I miss Fabrice. We haven't worked together open source for a while. But yeah, and like even and also so that was like all the previous iterations, and like the final iteration before Stitches was Pedro, who came in with variants. Like he looked at variants as like from a consumption perspective of like, or from a design system perspective, like a really good API to just define like variations of a component. But I saw the technical benefit of it, and that was to drop the callback, the props callback, and rather use like these static variants. That just improved performance a ton. So that was a super fun collaboration. I think I'm kind of known for, I'm trying to find my, like, what's the best way for me to work. I'm like, my partner, she's from academia, and I've never been in academia. I didn't continue school after, I didn't go to university or anything. But she describes me as like the perfect like professor type, because I just iterate on fundamental things. I'm not like the person that really brings things into complete fruition, and I have all ideas all the time, like pivoting and like iterating. Yeah, anyways, so I'm sorry about about that, but I'm trying to be more conscious and honest about, like, even now we're playing around with this. I'm not saying that I'm building like a library or anything. It's about the educational part of it, right? Like just doing these iterations and making these reflections and building these tiny tools to explore concepts and stuff. There's a lot of learning and value in just doing that. And I think that's what I find most fun, is that part of the process, actually solidifying an API, making it public, and saying like, this is how you should do a certain thing. I'm not that good at that. Yeah, I'm really miss Stitches. It was kind of sad that actually we do have this other. Let's see. GitHub. I did some exploration with, but I didn't do this on streams. Should check out this repo. We call it CSS 19 because of React 19. And the whole idea here is that it's kind of interesting. Like the whole premise of this is that with React 19, we get first class support for style hoisting and deduplication. This opened up the door to rethink components and CSS in React, as React can now be responsible for providing CSS across client and server boundary. Vue and Svelte has first class support for component CSS with custom syntax to bind component props and state. Like, how would that look like for React? Like, what if React shipped with actual CSS, not just inline styles? And then the idea here is that there's already been tons of explorations with the CSS prop, but what if that CSS prop was like native to React? So that's what this project explores. And it's really, really cool how it works. It's super, super simple. Everything is based on the new features of React 19. So even the implementation here, yeah, I can't remember all of it. But anyways, so the whole project is about like imagining React with a native CSS prop. And doing this, it just works. And it's actually super nice how the CSS is created as well. It basically just makes a hash of this object. So it doesn't matter how you structure the object. If it's the same object, like in contents, it creates the same hash. But the good thing about that is that you don't get like 5 different class names based on this CSS thing. You actually get one class name, right? And you see the actual styles for that class name. And then you can, of course, define it outside of a component, blah, blah, blah. And you have global style. And yeah, scope, and you have variables, stuff like that. Yeah, let me link the repo. And then we explored like other things. The cool thing is it just works. Like you don't have to think about anything special for server side or anything. Like all of it just works out of the box. So you just consume the API, which is really, really nice. And then we reflected on like, what does it mean to do theming? So for example, in the CSS package, you can create variables, but it doesn't really have themes, because themes is more than creating variables. It's actually, oh, what happened there? Oh, let's go in here instead, themes. It's actually more than variables. So when you do themes, you don't think about variables like CSS variables. You think about tokens, right? So you create these tokens, and then you create a theme that you give a name, and it has some tokens. And then I can't remember what this is. Is it like overrides? Yeah, sorry. So these are overrides. And then you create like a themes provider. And then it's really interesting because this callback changes this theme based on preference. So like custom browser has a preference, right, in terms of light and dark theme. So you can just, yeah, I can play around. I'm actually a little bit confused with this API, but the whole point is that this is like something else. It's kind of an abstraction over the CSS prop, really. And then you have an even higher abstraction than that, which is like actual design systems. So this is like based on the other packages, I think. You can create like a very strict set of like tokens. But it basically works the same, and it's typed and everything. Anyways, it's a cool repo because we did a lot of exploration, and yeah, the types, like the API of Stitches got quite exotic, and I had some crazy typing there. What's kind of cool about that typing experience is that style components was like super slow on typing, but with the experience of doing all the crazy typing in Stitches, I made a PR for style components that improved like IntelliSense performance. It was like 3 times faster because of one tiny little change. And that tiny little change was style components supports like this as prop, the famous as prop, and it was typed. So it would actually give you suggestions on all the different kinds of elements. And that typing in and of itself had such a huge performance cost, and you rarely use it. And when you use it, you don't need the IntelliSense, right? You know the elements you can use. So, but just making that property value a string instead of an actual looking at all the different elements you can use, the general performance of the IntelliSense went up like 3 times, which was really, really fun. Yeah, where were we? So state management in React does not scale. Like I want to make, so here I'm just going to make statements that everyone like generally agrees on. So state management in React does not scale. That is true. Everyone, like, when does it not, like, when does it become an actual issue? That can be argued. Does not scale infinitely. Infinitely. At some point, you will meet performance. At some point, yeah. The challenges with React. I'm just gonna make some statements. State management in React does not scale infinitely. At some point, you will get performance issues. Yeah, how does not scale. Doesn't scale well. I'm just gonna, yeah, let's just do that. And then there's dependency erase wrecks your brain. So hooks is not a problem with React. We've kind of been stating absolutely no worries, Mikey. Like, these streams are about just playing, so happy to diverge. And thanks again for the kind words. Yeah, so we've been kind of saying that hooks are bad, but it's not the hooks. It's the dependency erase that's bad. Or not the dependency erase themselves, but why you need them. Like, and the reason you need them is because use state and use reducer is based on like leans on the reconciler. While we are making hooks that leans on observation. Well, it doesn't lean, like, that's the wrong statement. Like, it doesn't lean on the reconciler. It's kind of like, what's the right way to put this? Like, it leans, well, it does lean on the reconciler in the sense that, well, it doesn't lean on the reconciler. Reconciliation is just what happens when you change the state. I guess it leans on value comparison. Yeah. Value comparison for value comparison is good for the reconciler, but bad for engineers. And that leads to dependency erase and all of this stuff. But mental overhead for engineers. Dependency erase, immutable updates to values. So basically, what this leads to is that we have to deal with dependency erase, and we also have to deal with immutable state updates, which the language doesn't support, right? There's no primitives for immutability in JavaScript, so you have to do this, like assign a new array, you have to do the spreading of arrays and slicing to put something inside an array and all of this stuff. Where you use immer if you don't want to do that. Does not scale. It's kind of rough to say that, but it's true. And if you can't relate to that, then you don't really. Hi, Petter. So if you can't relate to state management in React doesn't scale well, you don't really need to read further either. Like then you're fine just using React. But if you felt that friction, like the frictions with React, have you ever felt state management in React does not scale? Have you ever stated or felt that state management in React does not scale? Value comparison is good for the reconciler, but mental overhead for engineers. Or maybe I should say dependency. Have you ever stated dependency arrays wrecks my brain? And then it's like the whole it's kind of like immutable state updates, but I want to be like more what's it called, silly. It's kind of the idea of like array slice 0 to 2, insert something, array dot slice 2 plus 1, that kind of stuff. And that maybe a bigger problem is like doing nested updates. Nested changes, state updates. Yeah, because that's also nested, right? It's inside an array. Nested state updates are awful. Yeah. And then what if React came with, the problem with React is not its hooks. It is how it does state management. What if we replaced the state management hooks of React with, what if we replace the state management hooks, and this would be React's hooks, and then these are kind of the new hooks. And then we're in this position where we can start discussing how they are different. So maybe a good thing would be to like just show it. That's always powerful, right? By the way, I need some other music. It's Friday. I'm in a good mood because I just got some recognition out of nowhere. And I have my 90s hits close by, so I'm gonna Baby Think Twice with Celine Dion. That's perfect. Let's see. So yeah, I think we're just gonna play with this. Let's see. Use state versus use store. Yeah, so we're just gonna basically do like a comparison of them. So we're gonna write some code. So like, by the way, if anyone's like watching or watching this, Petter is a friend, like a dear friend, Petter, all the way back from kindergarten. We were in, yeah, we don't have to go into details, but yeah, from kindergarten. And every Friday I buy chocolate and a beer. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm gonna buy it later. But yeah, every Friday, every Saturday, chocolate, a beer, Coca-Cola, and then I'm happy. I don't need anything more. Let's see. Import use state from React. And then we have our counter, and we might say count set count use state 0, and we're gonna, let's see, count is count on click set count current +1. No worries, you're the second person today that hijacked the stream. Though that was actually React related, the other divergence we had. But yeah, have a great day, Petter. Talk to you later. Let's see, use state. So this is how we do it with use state. So the thing about use state though is that in and of itself, well, I guess we're kind of seeing it here, right? We're kind of seeing that to be able to update the value, we have to use the callback, because we need to like actually update the value. We can't just change it. So how are we going to do this? Let's just do React. What do we call it? Observing React? Observing React. We should probably call it something else. So the point here is that you use store. And the reason we call it store is because it can take methods as well. But we're not going to show that yet. Oh, what do we do here? Store or counter? State, I mean. State.count. And then we're going to do state.count ++. No, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do. That's what we're going to do. It's a bit more clear. I'm going to do the same here. Just reads better. There you go. Cool. But there's more things to this. How are we going to explain that? Because this is like, so what, right? But there, yeah. How are we gonna put this? Like I have different points here. Maybe I should make them explicit. Updating values. With React, you are forced to use a callback with patterns of spreading with how should we put this? With React, you're forced to use updating state in React typically requires you to update the existing state and manually ensure what should we call it? It's not called dereferencing, but like reference changes. And manually, how should we put this? Updating state in. I don't want to like emphasize too much here. Like I want to do it simple and just kind of run through it. Typically requires you to update the existing state to ensure to uphold to God Damn it. Requires, okay. Updating state in React adds the mental overhead of value comparison. You cannot use native mutation APIs in JavaScript, but rather lean on often complex patterns of ensuring reference updates to objects and arrays. That's basically it. So maybe this wasn't a good example. Like what we really want to do is use like an object here. So let's actually use count here. Yeah, let's do this instead. So we're gonna set state. We're gonna do this instead. So set state is actually current, where we have to do, this is more true to current.count plus 1. This is really how you do it. State.count. Like not specifically with a count, but like general state management. Yes, and then yeah, and then these looks way more similar. That's good. One thing I thought about was like, what if we just use reactive state? So everything's just prefixed with reactive layout effect. And then use read-only state. I'm not sure about this one. But you have use reactive effect. So you kind of have this use reactive memo. You just have this kind of prefix to the existing. So you kind of also know how they map, right? That's good. Maybe the reactive is use reactive effect, use reactive layout effect. Maybe the reactive is kind of too much. But I think it helps a lot with the mental model. Anyways, so updating state in React adds the mental overhead of value comparison. You cannot use native mutation APIs in JavaScript, but rather forced to lean on often complex pattern of ensuring reference updates to objects and arrays. Libraries like Immer does allow you to can aid, but you need to understand value comparison. But value comparison shows its ugly face. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Let's just write this for now. Okay, and then we have this thing, which is like super straight. So let's call it use reactive state. And then import use reactive state from observing React. I want to call it reactive React, but that's taken. What's interesting about this is like the whole kind of exploration with the Bonsify and constructor pattern and all of that. It's like the way I think about this is that I would prefer using these primitives as opposed to like decoupling from React completely and go into a different model. I would prefer like, no, I just want hooks that are performant and that allows me to use mutation. But then I would still like move most of my state up to the root of the application, but it's still like defined with React. I guess one thing that kind of bothers me about it is that you can't guarantee that your function will run once. So you would still be using like refs and stuff for variables, which is kind of shitty. That's the one thing that really bothers me. But maybe that's a good trade-off. I don't know. Because that's kind of the end game of this. Well, it's not the end game, actually, but it's... Yeah, it's having to use refs, but maybe it's fine. Like, we're gonna explore it. Is there another term than reactive that's kind of... like, so it's not so long? Use beep state. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just be explicit for now. Okay, where were we? Updating state in React adds the mental overhead of valid comparison. You cannot use native mutation APIs in JavaScript, but forced to lean on often complex patterns of ensuring reference updates to objects and arrays. Maybe we don't need, maybe that's all we actually need to do here. No, we have another thing. We have like protecting state and like adding functions to actually change the state in a constrained way. And this is actually use state use reducer. Let's see. What should we call this? So even here with an increase, right? What do we call this? This was updating values. It's kind of like, it's about constraints. You know what? Maybe we should just go straight to passing state. Passing state. Passing state. Okay, let's try that. You want to constrain or exposing state. Exposing state. Yeah. You want to constrain how your state can change. For example, the counter should only increase. With React, you either need to use a reducer or create a separate function or create a separate function that you pass as a prop. So in React, what you would do here, by the way, I just have to keep tabs on the session we're gonna do. Let's see. So here we're gonna move this to increase. Oh, sorry, function increase. Well, the thing is, you really need to like use callback. Increase is use callback, and that needs a dependency array. Like, it's insane. How did we ever get there? And And then you can increase it. But this is like, this is kind of, yeah, but no, this is fair. This is definitely fair. Oh, you know what? We want to constrain how your state can change. For example, the counter should only increase with React, or create a separate function, or create a separate hook, So what we're going to do is we're going to say, yeah, this is good. Function use counter. And then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do return state. No, how are we going to do this? This is the thing that I always struggle with. Like if so you kind of have to do something like this, right? No, because you can't. Yeah, something like that. So you return the state and you have increase, maybe something like that. Or maybe you could just, yeah, so you kind of have to do something like this. But now the state will always change reference, right? So you kind of have to use memo. Like, and I don't, but here maybe it looks like I'm making it more difficult than it needs to be. And to some extent I am, I guess, but it's about doing it right. So maybe I should drop using the callback and everything. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna drop the callback just to not be an ass. And then I can rather comment that we're not using the. So this will be cons counter, use counter. Counter.increase, count is counter.count. Okay, so this is fair, right? This doesn't look that bad. And you could imagine that you use a reducer here instead, but what we're gonna do here is and I'm going to mention performance. You want to constrain how your state can change. For example, the counter should only increase. With React, you either need to use a reducer or create. We're going to have a separate section on passing props, actually. Passing state as props. Yeah, and we're going to have passing state through context. That's also an important point. Okay, so here, what we can actually do here, we can say, well, if we wanted to protect it, yeah, so I think maybe this. Okay, let's just write it first. So use counter. So this would be increase. And this would say state count plus plus. But now we need to use read only state. Was that the thing I called it? This is the thing I'm not, like, this is an important thing. Being able to create a scope of where you can freely manipulate the state and then return a read-only version of it. But introducing that already, it's a little bit. Yeah. I'm just gonna. Yeah, well, it can. Let's see. Sorry. Exposing state. Yeah, it's the use read only state. This is weird. Kind of weird. And even just the name of it. Use read only reactive state. That would kind of be the name of it. I find that weird, but it has to work something like this because this reference has to be the reactive thing, and then you just return like a read-only version of that. That's how you protect it. Like you don't protect it by yeah, how should I put that? You don't protect it by not exposing set state. You just protect it by not being allowed to change any values. Yeah, and it could do the same read only. Something like that. I'm just going to put it like that for now. So that will be counter count is counter count. Yeah, sorry, this should be increase. Let's see. Counter dot increase. So that will be just the same. But I'm kind of stating here, you want to constrain how your state can change. For example, the counter should only increase. With React, you either need to use a reducer or create a separate hook. But I already did that, right? But the thing is, like, not every step here is like, oh, it's so much better to do it the other way. But it's like, it's building. So if you expose, so here I'm returning a new object every time the component renders, right? So if I pass this counter down to a nested component, the reference will change every single time. But it's hard to explain. To avoid, okay, what I want to state is to avoid performance issues. To avoid performance issues, you either have to use a reducer or other hooks to ensure to manage references. So the whole point here is, okay, so I'm gonna go back to the sheet because maybe it's a little bit unfair, but I don't care. So what we gotta do, we can now do, oh, sorry. So we can like do state.count here. I don't think that, no, we don't need to change that. So we need to use callback here. And we also need to use memo here. So if the state changes, then we want to recalculate our memo. And this is just to keep the same reference for this object that holds our state and our functionality to change that state. So maybe a better example here would be reducer. Yeah, maybe we should do that. To avoid performance issues, you have to move to a reducer. Yeah, I think that's better. So use reducer. What is it? State action. Switch action.type case increment. And then we'll do, yeah, that's more fair. Like you don't have to do that. But the problem now is that we have to return both the, oh, I guess we can just return. Yeah, sorry. This is more fair. The thing that's kind of hidden here is that we're not making a point of us. You have to move to reducer, changing the mental model of making state updates. That's kind of the point. To avoid performance issues, to avoid a lot of use, to avoid use callback, use memo orchestration, you have to move to a reducer, changing the mental model of making state updates. Well, you can choose. You can choose. Yeah, okay. Sorry. You can choose to either orchestrate references to avoid performance issues. So let's just bring in the use counter here. Oops. So let's, or you can change the mental model of state and state updates by using use reducer. Okay. This is what I wanted to say. So here we're going to bring back the other one. Oh, I have to write it again. Okay. State, set state equals use state, count 0, const increment equals use callback. And this would be set state, current, count current.count plus 1, and then return use memo. Here we're going to bring in the state, and we're going to bring in increment, and then use memo has a dependency to state. That's when it's going to update. I guess we don't need use callback for increment because it never really changes. I think this, okay, so the thing here, I think we're gonna actually change this. So we're gonna change this to state.count because this is actually how it is. Like we're just updating a count, right? But this function might do some asynchronous work. And it basically needs access to some state. And to make sure that, no, let's remove the use callback here. Yeah, I don't think that's fair. I think we can have function increment. Sorry. I'm just trying to be fair. No, wait, that is not, no, we have to do this. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna use callback and we're gonna pass increment here as well. Because it depends on both of them. Like you would actually get an error on a linter if you didn't do this. So we're gonna do this. And the point is that even though increment technically doesn't need to be a dependency of this use memo to ensure that the object only changes reference when there's an actual change to the state. What was I talking about? Yeah, like here you might need access to the current state without updating it, right? There is no get state or anything like that. So if I did something async and I needed a count here, I would have to do state.count or at least state, right? So this function gets redefined so you get access to the latest version of state. Or because if I didn't do that, I would pass an increment that would be stale, I think. Well, but if it depended on state, I would always have the latest. No, I think this is unfair. But me even having to reflect on this is insane. I'm not ready for Prodigy, sorry. But since you're getting a linting error here, I think we're gonna keep it. Or at least, yeah, put increment there. No, but then it doesn't work because now, okay, let's just do this. God damn it. This is how you would be forced to do it. And then you can say, oh, but there's a new React compiler that does this for you. But yeah, that's great. You can choose to either orchestrate references to avoid performance issues or use React compiler. So you can choose either use the React compiler. Use the React compiler. Or you can change the mental model of state and state updates by using use reducer. Okay. And then you have use counter. But then you have like, but if you're using use reducer, you're getting the state and the dispatcher. And now we have to pass down 2 props to any nested components, but we don't have to emphasize that here. Okay, so we're gonna, let's see, let's just move this up here. Okay, let's just do that. Use React compiler, or you can change the method model of state. Use counter dispatch. Counter.count and then counter dispatch type increment. OMG. Okay, so references to avoid performance issues. One thing I do like about doing the state management in doing the state management in the reconciler is that you can actually, or can you? Thinking. No, that's actually a big ass problem. What if I wanna, yeah, no. There's one thing that really bothers me with this. Like I mentioned how you can actually use hooks to build up state trees, but you really can't. Yeah. No, this is actually not gonna work in the, wow. So what I'm reflecting on is how, for example, in Bonsify, where are we? GitHub. So for example, I show here state tree. So what you can do here is I can do this counter safely, and then I can put that on a nested object here. Like technically you could do that with a hook. So this could be called like use counter, and I could do use counter here to return the counter. That's fine. But what if I wanted to do something like this? I guess that's also fine. Like use doubler. That's like, it's fine because it's like just running through it once. The problem is actually, where are we? So for example, if I were going to use explicit states. So this is a better example. So here I have a counter that starts out as idle. And this would be like use idle. And that's fine because it's running synchronously. But then I'm calling start. And now I'm suddenly saying counter.state equals counting. And this wouldn't work because you couldn't say use counting here because we're not in a component scope. So you can't like build up your state internally. Well, I guess, okay. No, wait, maybe it's, well, how should I put this? Yeah, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I guess the problem is more, you're not composing it the same way. Yeah, but maybe that's how, yeah, no. So, sorry. So I guess a better example is, so for example, in Family Scrum, I have this thing called a session, and this session is actually mounting Family Scrum, or like creating Family Scrum. But inside Family Scrum, I have a bunch of state, observable state. And the problem is I couldn't use reactive state here. But maybe it's not an actual problem. It's just because I've done it this way. It doesn't mean. Well, okay. So that's interesting. So what I would do there instead is that I wouldn't actually create family scrum on the authenticated session. I would actually I would like use family scrum instead. Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. Let's continue. You want to constrain how your state can change. For example, the counter should only increase. You can choose either orchestrate references to avoid performance issues. Use the React change the mental model of state center by using a reducer. Or you could use the React compiler. Okay. But with observing React, oh my God, I need some more inspiring music. What's this? Let's see. So here you just use reactive state and then you expose it as read only. So this is exposing with observing. Well, let's just make a comment. Explicitly protect against any changes outside the scope of this hook. Okay, cool. Let's continue. So passing state as props. When passing state as props, you need to evaluate how often those props change versus the complexity of reconciliation in the nested component. Should you use memo or not? What should we show as an example here? We should what should we use as an example here? I think we should use counter. Yeah, okay, I think I know what we can do. So function counter. And let's just imagine we have our counter here. And then we're gonna do like a counter label, counter. Well, no, we're gonna change this. So h1 count is. I need some more optimistic music. So React Counter.count. Counter is counter.count. Count is counter.count. And what I want to do, I want to yeah, okay. So complex, like I guess this is nested component, nested increaser component. That's what I want to do. So the point is, either I pass down the counter, right? Because the point is, if I change the count now, this nested increaser component will reconcile every time. But if I do increase, counter increase, then it won't. Nested increaser, how should I put this? Badly performing. How should I put this? Badly, yeah, performing increaser, optimal increaser. Okay. The badly performing increaser cannot be optimized because whenever the count changes, so does the counter object. But if we pass only the counter.increase, the increase will not change reference when the count changes. Okay, we're gonna keep the hook. We need to do, okay. We kind of need to have both of them. The badly performing increaser cannot be optimized because whenever the count be optimized with memo, because whenever the count changes, so does the counter object. But if we pass only the counter, that increase will not change reference when the count changes. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do a badly performing increaser. Ignored memo. Increase count, just to not, okay, increase memo, increase count. Okay, the ignored memo increase count cannot be optimized with memo because whenever the count changes, so does the counter object. But if we pass only the counter increase, that increase will not change reference when the count changes. And then observer react. I have to find a different name. So with that thing, we can just pass it. Doesn't matter. Let's see, use reactive state. And then we have, what did it look like? Let's change that. Count is counter count. Memo increase count by A, memo increase B. With observer react, They behave exactly the same. And you do not even have to use memo explicitly. Yeah, which is great, right? Wow, I think this is the best perspective I've ever kind of tried to explain why I have so many issues with React. And also, this is the first time I feel like we've had a perspective where we are able to apply all these ideas in an actual React context. Not saying that you have to decouple from React. Like the Impact React project was kind of like that. But it did introduce like a lot of special primitives. Like components was one thing, and then you had this context, which was another thing. But here you can just put things wherever you want them. And you can create hooks, and there's no different runtime. Like Impact React has two different runtimes. You have the reconciling runtime in components, and then you have the non-reconciling runtime in the context, the reactive context. Well, here you're always in this component reconciler context. It's just, you just have better hooks. It's just about the hooks, which I think simplifies the concept a ton. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go into a session. So I'm gonna drop out, but I'm gonna continue like documenting this, and then I'm actually gonna look at the family Scrum map and see what it would look like to use these primitives. Because I would much rather, if I were ever to like introduce, if I were to like compare like Bonsify with this, I would rather do this because it's much less intrusive. Yeah, cool. Bye for now.